Okay, so hello, Harry, right? It's great to have you back. It's been it's been a while since I've seen you in the courtroom.
Killer. Last time I saw you, you looked a little different. But I don't mean to hijack your show right away, but I just got to say, your level of preparation shone through, because as a former trial lawyer, you can take somebody to the point where they know everything, but then there's that extra bit where they actually have it down to show that they're listening and as if they're answering in the moment, even though they've said it already 200 times. And that's what you did. You really gave the impression you were listening, responding honestly,
and more importantly,
it wasn't televised. I'm almost done.
And
it's
more
a shame it
importantly,
wasn't televised
respectfully.
because you could see right away that, you were credible. And I tried to translate this in the afternoons on television, but you kind of had to be there. That's what a jury's for. Anyway, hijacking over. Hello, Mr. Host again. Welcome back.
Well,
and thanks for having me.
Well, good. Look, first of all, what I was saying to you is most importantly, it was done respectfully. And that was the difference. Right. But nevertheless,
you never, ever lost your shit.
Nope.
The moment they called such a big thing, you were just very properly kind of flummoxed, polite, respectful. You never, ever, ever, ever let them get your goat. Not easy.
All right. So instead of just jumping right into it, because we have a lot to talk about, let me ask you this. Speaking about another trial that just took place, what's your take on the Hunter Biden verdict? Because I know that you said that he should not have been prosecuted in the first place. What's your take on that?
Look, I think the verdict is sound. Now, that sounds like a contradiction. I was on Steph Rule last night. She said, it was a sound verdict, but he shouldn't have been prosecuted. But that's exactly right. The DOJ has vast prosecutorial discretion. They exercise it, and it's very important that they should exercise it in a across-the-board equal way, treating like people alike. And it's completely clear that someone who signs a form falsely and does nothing else, doesn't use the gun to commit a crime, or, isn't a known member of a gang, does not get prosecuted. And moreover here, they treated him, they worked out a diversion agreement, which is absolutely consistent with how they normally handle things. That unraveled in court through no fault of his. And then boom, they came at him with everything. And, in the normal Department of Justice, that doesn't happen because you have a supervisory structure that exists, among other things, to make sure that DOJ policy and consistency is applied. But because this guy, David Weiss, is operating as a lone wolf and Merrick Garland is hands off, he could do this thing. So it's a crime that Hunter Biden committed. I don't have any quibble with the jury, but it's the kind of crime that is never prosecuted by the DOJ, isn't in federal court. And in that sense, it's a real injustice, even though I don't think the jury did anything wrong. Does that make sense?
It does. But you know what it sounds a lot like? It sounds like what trumpets all the time.
Michael.
That the DOJ never should have brought the case against him. I'll tell you what I'm getting a little bit.
But let me just stop you, because this comes up again and again. It does sound like it, except in one case, it's accurate, and in the other case, it's inaccurate. There's over 1,000 cases, just like Trump's, that have been brought. There is, I think, 0 cases like Hunter's that have been brought. So one is legit and one's illegit. That's all.
I mean, let's also then, I'll talk about myself for a second.
Okay.
I have,
you earned it.
When I was charged with, we'll just start with the first 5 counts on tax evasion. Now, I never, and I said this to both Susan Hoffinger, who's the prosecutor, as well as Todd Blanche, defense counsel, as I call him, the stupidest lawyer of all time. What I said to him was, I never, not since the very beginning, I never disputed the underlying facts, meaning that there was money that was not paid to the IRS. What I have always disputed in my PSR all the way through my books, even to today, even when I sat on the witness stand. I've always maintained the fact that I should not have been prosecuted, that I was not afforded the same thing that other taxpayers are afforded. And that's an opportunity to meet with an IRS agent, to discuss it, to bring in my accountant, a lawyer, myself, and to talk to an agent about the discrepancy, and then to work it out in a civil fashion. That's the way the system works. I was given 48 hours. And if I didn't accept the plea that the Southern District of New York prosecutors, Nick Roos, Tom McKay, Andrea Griswold, Kazami, right? If I didn't accept the plea in that 48-hour period, they were filing an 80-page indictment that was to include my wife. And I elected to protect my family.
And look, this happens, and I'm not suggesting every time that this happens, it's illegit. This is what feds do, but you were a pawn in their game. That's just a fact. And they were playing a bigger game and then it got all caught up in. We can talk about Barr and Berman and Trump, etc. But that's what happened to you. You were sort of an intermediate step, and then other shit happened. But that's right. I don't know enough about how that would have worked out. But if they didn't do it as they should with other taxpayers, that is an injustice.
Well, in fact,
can I ask you a question?
Well, in fact, before you ask me that, in fact, in my sentencing memorandum, I created, because I came up with the thought of it while this was going on. I came up with a box, and in that box, I listed like Swiss Beats, John Travolta, other actors, well-known people who owed like $10 million of money that was hidden overseas. I never hid $1. All my money was sitting in Capital One Bank, and I gave to my accountant, this guy Jeffrey Getzel, right, a real jerk off. I gave him every single bank statement in a 3-ring notebook, in a 3-ring, loose, like you used to have when you were in school, in an organized and tabulated fashion. They never gave me a chance to resolve this, and I've never in my life been audited. I've never in my life been, I've never filed a late tax return. I've never until 2017, till that year for the tax year 2017. In 2018, I never even asked the IRS for an extension in my whole life. Plus, I had paid like $4 million in taxes over those years. So who pays 4 and doesn't pay 1.3? It was an error, right?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. This happens with Hunter Biden too. Everything you're talking about goes to prosecutorial discretion and what's the just and reasonable exercise of government power. Once it happens, once they've made that decision, and I think Abby Lowell, a very intelligent, aggressive lawyer, blundered, because that point that like they treated you different, there's just no room, absent fantastic proof of being, really the subject of some kind of prejudice or discrimination. You can't bring that before a judge, much less a jury. So at that point, with Abby Lowell anyway, that dog was not gonna hunt at that point in the proceedings, and that's what makes it a real. There's many defendants, for some legit, some not, who believe they've been singled out, but prosecutors do single out. It's just they need to do it in the same way for the same kinds of people. And, it I'm sure can be super frustrating to be on that side. Sure I have a different question for you, but you keep going until it's open, until you tell me I can ask it.
Wanted to ask you though, because Hunter's case, this case was presided over by a Trump-appointed judge, Mary Ellen Nurikahu, right? Or
That's
Nurikeo, whatever, however she pronounces her name. Mm-hmm. And she uncovered holes in his earlier plea agreement. Is that the main reason that Hunter stood trial?
Yes and no. First of all, as best I can tell, she's a good judge. She ran a good trial,
I agree with that.
Yeah, and she uncovered a hole, but it was a fair hole. What happened was the plea agreement.
She covered an a-hole? Who is the a-hole?
Sorry about that. Yeah, exactly. Oh, that. Yeah, never mind. Can I rewind that?
Yes.
She uncovered a particular problem, and it was a problem. And it's interesting. Well, we don't know the full details, but he was going to be treated with diversion. In other words, keeps his nose clean for 2 years and is never charged, which is consistent with how DOJ handles these offenses. That was the deal. But there was a provision in there that would basically have her be the final arbiter of whether he'd kept his nose clean. Supposedly, the Biden folks wanted in there out of insurance in case Trump were to win and he would renege on the agreement. But that was in there, and she properly said, well, wait a second. This is a prosecutorial decision. I can't be the trigger for what you do. That's an executive function. And at that point, it unraveled in court. Now, at that time, I've had things, I'm sure you have too, unravel in court. And what normally should happen is, sorry, Your Honor, we'll go away for half an hour. You go to a side room, you work it out, everything's okay. But if you read the transcript, things got kind of crazy and macho and degenerated fast. And both sides were, well, then there's no deal. And then they squared off. Not a smart thing to do.
But wasn't that also, Harry, didn't it also have to do with his tax issue in California, that he wanted it to be a global settlement? And because there's reporting.
Yeah. So absolutely, the plea agreement was the 2 misdemeanor counts on taxes, which he's now going to have the book thrown at him, and he's been indicted in L.A. and there'll be felonies, and this little diversion thing on the gun, this pissant thing on the gun that he had for 10. I don't mean, he was a drug addict with a gun. That's not good, but it's not something they don't normally prosecute. Everything was fine with the tax stuff. It was just this little wrinkle, but then they got kind of combative about it, and shortly thereafter, Weiss gets called to the carpet for a sweetheart deal, etc., and they couldn't put the pieces back together again. Lowell goes after it very aggressively. You're reneging on your plea agreement. That's a hard case to make, and at that point, they were at loggerheads, and that's what happened to Hunter Biden. If they'd written it without that little provision, it would have been fine. And of course, the screaming question in the case for Weiss is, all right, this is what you thought was fair a year ago, this treatment. Now, I understand there was a little macho back and forth in court, but you're the prosecutor exercising the power of the United States. What has changed for you about Hunter Biden that you now think the fair treatment of the gun thing is 3 felony counts and the treatment of the tax thing is throw the book at him? Why exactly? If he were in the Department of Justice supervisory structure, he would have to answer those questions internally to supervisors. But he's a free agent because he's a special counsel and Garland is keeping arm's length. So there could be good answers to that question, but I haven't heard them. And he hasn't provided them, and he doesn't have to. Once you go to court, all he has to show is the charges I'm making I can prove. But what the hell? What happened from a year ago that caused you now to throw the book at him? That's the screaming question.
Sure, that is the screaming question. But I will go one step further, because I've been sort of bouncing around from conservative to progressive news stations. And the interesting thing that I heard is that Trump Republicans, and I'm talking about members of Congress, were actually hoping that Hunter Biden would be found not guilty so that they can talk about how the judiciary, the Department of Justice, is rigged. So my question to you then is, now that Hunter Biden was found guilty, you think that these MAGA morons will finally acknowledge the fact that the court system is not rigged?
Yeah. No, but they'll do it implicitly by shutting up, as you say. I mean, look, the conviction in the trial you testified was the New York State Court, and somehow they've twisted it to be actually all in cahoots with the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, and President Biden. It is complete lunacy from the start. And you're right. And what we're hearing now from them is it's a sideshow, or they're just being quiet. And for them to be quiet is a deafening admission that never mind. Now, that doesn't mean they'll stop on their refrain about the New York conviction, but it is awfully awkward. The President of the United States' son, prosecuted by the President of the United States DOJ in pretty controversial and unfortunate fashion. And, that's happening. How are you going to square that with a New York court having convicted Donald Trump on solid evidence, so.
Yeah, I guess you don't. So my last question is part of this sort of, this whole theme. You think Hunter is likely to do time behind bars? And if so, how much? Because I'm seeing some crazy ass guidelines. And what bothers me is he's charged on 3 counts. Trump is responsible on 34 counts. However, it's already been, I guess, decided that Trump's counts will all run consecutive, not concurrent. Thereby, the most that he would ever be accountable behind
you mean
bars.
Concurrent,
Trump,
not consecutive. Yeah.
Right, backwards. It would be 4 years, as opposed to what would be like 136 years in terms of guidelines.
Yeah. Okay, so that kind of decision, whether things are concurrent or consecutive, is an animal of state law. With Hunter Biden, the guidelines, and besides everything I said, how this is not what the DOJ normally prosecutes, and how he switched for reasons we don't know and don't seem legit. This, taking a step back, this is just not a case for. It's really a case for the drug treatment, not the criminal justice system. So in the throes of crack cocaine addiction, he does a lie on a form. This is a guy who was really lost after his brother had died in a terrible tragedy. He has chinned himself back up. It really shouldn't be a crime. It's bad, but it shouldn't be. It should be treated as a drug addiction problem. But all that said, his guidelines equate for this one signature that equates to 3. You always in federal system get several charges out of a single event. Get 15 to 21 months. That to me seems very long for what he's really convicted of, and I think it will to the judge as well. So my best guess is, because the guidelines now, remember, this, they used to be pretty really constraining on judges, and now they're not. So my best guess, he'll just get a few months. But he's got the fucking tax counts, as we were just talking about. Those are big time felonies. And David Weiss, he's just being kind of vicious, but his statement after the conviction is this investigation isn't closed yet. So he's rattling sabers as if the Burisma stuff and all of that could still come home. So I don't think he's going to be done until Hunter is potentially seeing real time. I think this offense, however, when he's actually sentenced, will be a couple months.
Yeah, because they are now talking about FARA violations, the federal the Agent Registration Act.
Well, in the book,
that's a heavy sentence too. Violation of
100%. And look, I was a prosecutor. I defended the DOJ, and I was for throwing the book at really bad actors like Al Capone. All these things, and you want to incapacitate them and find things. That I think is tough stuff, but legit. But man, and by the way, let me set to the side anything like threatening to indict your wife. That is really pretty nasty. But what is really nasty is throwing the book at someone who, Hunter Biden does it. Yeah, I think he probably maybe exploited the name a little. And he definitely, I know him some because I knew his brother who died, and I've, had drinks with him and stuff. And, the guy just descended into the abyss, and I'm sure did things that, I'm not sure, but might have done things that need, some, recompense. But treating him like one of the 10 most wanted, it's really ugly.
Listen, I really feel bad for him because I know I was treated like not one of the 10 most wanted, one of the most wanted. I mean, they treated me with it's I don't even know how to describe it. I came across that federal location monitoring agreement when I was released. Due to COVID for the ankle bracelet, went to 500 Pearl Street, met up with this guy, Adam Pakula and Enid Phoebus, instead of going to Geo, which is the company, the outside company that does everything. So I found the document. And interestingly enough, here's the document. This is the actual federal location monitoring agreement that everybody signs. And then you'll notice that it has an identifiable number attached to it, as you know, all federal documents do. And it's a 2-page document. Then I found the one that they gave to me to sign. And you'll notice that there is no identifiable number attached to it, right? It just says federal location monitor. Not to mention, the real one has 19. So what is Lumen? Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or you're burning carbs. And it gives you a tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, something I need badly, and even stress management. So let me tell you how Lumen works. All you have to do is you breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fat or carbs. And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on the measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after your workouts and your meals so that you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. So here's what Lumen does. Lumen provides crucial insights and helpful guidance for your lifestyle. It requires effort, though, and it also requires a lifestyle change to achieve results. Let me be clear. Lumen is not just a weight loss tool. It's about understanding and improving your metabolic health. So let me also tell you why metabolic health matters. It matters because your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food that you eat into fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimum metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. It can also track your cycle as well as the onset of menopause and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts so that you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. So if you want to take the next step to improving your health, go right now to lumen.me/Cohen to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/Cohen for 15% off your purchase. And thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Paragraphs, the one that I was asked to sign, has 8. And there's spelling mistakes, there's pronoun mistakes. They call me, instead of a him, a her. I mean, it's all over the place. But again, this document does not exist in the federal system. It was made specifically for me. And when I refused to sign it because of its violation of the First Amendment in paragraph number 1, they then claimed that I refused to sign the document. Well, how could you be remanded off of a counterfeit document that doesn't exist? I mean, to me, it's like if I say, Harry, you killed somebody yesterday. I want you to sign this acknowledgement. You say, I'm not, because I wasn't even in that state. I was in California at the time. You're like, well, either sign it or we're gonna arrest you anyway. That's not normal. but it is exactly what Donald Trump keeps talking about on day number one.
You sound still pretty upset about that. Are you planning some, further legal action?
So
or
you
are
know
gonna
that,
try to
yes, no.
put this behind you?
So I brought the lawsuit against Trump, the DOJ, Bill Barr, and a whole slew of people. It was dismissed by Judge Lyman with a decision that, interestingly enough, is actually in accord with the lawsuit. He's just saying, because of the overturning of the Dobbs decision, the Bivens case, which is what this thing is predicated on, no longer applies. So I'm not able to sue based upon Bivens. Well, the only other way is you got to go to Congress, and Congress has to.
And by the way, Louis Lyman, a very fine, honest judge.
Yeah. I have no issues with Louis Lyman at all. In fact, his decision is very apologetic and pro-Michael. As was Alvin Hellestein, who was the judge that had me removed from the home confinement. We then went to a 3-judge appellate court, Second Circuit, and they affirmed Judge Lyman. Now we're going to the Supreme Court. We're actually filing a writ of certiorari the day before Trump's sentencing on July 10th. We're going to go there, and we're going to ask, for example, Judge Thomas, what did you mean when you say that Bivens applies if it is of the most unusual circumstance?
Yeah.
What
You're
could be more unusual?
This whole crazy stuff with Bivens now.
But what could be more unusual than the President of the United States weaponizing the Justice Department through a willing and complicit Attorney General to incarcerate a political critic and enemy? That's right out of Putin's playbook. And so we'll see what happens. By the way, Harry, what was your question that you wanted to ask?
I have a 2-part question for you. I have 2 questions for you, but there's so much I just want to frame them, and I hope you'll get to both of them. So it's a shorter question you've been asked before, but just honestly, to the extent you can recall it and you were in your body, what did it feel like there, looking at him and testifying against Trump, encountering him eye to eye? That's one question. Separate question, you can illuminate for us, even though they did it by video for him, what's it like now for him having to deal with a New York probation officer, and what sorts of kind of impingements on his liberty or indignity or whatever sort of await him now that he's a convict and will soon be a probationer?
So going to the first question, which is what was it like testifying 25 hours on the stand? It was brutal. It was grueling. It felt brutal, because Blanche, the sloat, is a meanderer when it comes to questioning. He went from 26. Look, you were in the courtroom, right? Which was, by the way, my next series.
I believe I was the first person to say meander, and it became the mantra for the entire TV.
Well, that's
coverage.
What he is. He's a meander. Yeah. He is a meandering, questioner. 2015, 2017, 2018, 2020, 2019, 2016. He's bouncing all over. So you have to immediately be able to recall what he's even talking about. Because, look, remember, I testified 7 times before Congress. Right. I testified to the Mueller team. I was, the day of the raid when I spoke with Trump, blah, blah, blah. It was very, very difficult. But here's the funny thing when it came to Trump. Only once during that 25 hours did we actually lock eyes for a split second. The rest of the time, he had his eyes closed. He was slumped back. He was either sleeping or just sitting there, almost like a petulant child when you're playing peekaboo. Just because you have your hands in front of your face, right, doesn't mean that you're not there, right? And that's sort of what he was doing. He was kind of playing peekaboo with the court. First of all, I found it insanely disrespectful, not even just to Judge Merchan,
to the jury,
but to the jury. If you are going to do anything to fuck up your chances of having anybody, side with you on anything, how about keep your eyes open and pretend like you actually give a shit what anybody's going to say?
And by the way, forget about it. I had binoculars. He was, at least many times, he was either I saw REM or else that the guy was asleep for part of the time. I wondered if maybe, well, never mind. Okay, so that's part of it. Go ahead.
So the second part about the PSR, I do want to say that I take, and I want to say this to my listeners, that I take offense to the manner. I understand it, but I take offense to some of the things that were done. For example, okay, I don't want the cost to New York City, in terms of moving him around with the police and shutting down the courtroom, that. I understand that I am not the same as Donald. In fact, nobody else really is, other than another former president. Where I have the problem, why not just send the probation officer to Mar-a-Lago to do it there? For example, one of the things that I was required to do, and all indicted or all inmates, felons, are required to do
convicts,
it.
Felons,
convicts,
exactly.
Right? You are required to take a urine test for drugs in your system and so on. All right. You got to piss in a cup in front of the probation officer. And he should have been required to do that too, because it is part of the process, whether or not that the guy has a drug addiction. Maybe he is on Adderall. Maybe he's on some sort of a drug that's making him sleep. I don't know. Maybe he's on whatever. So PSR is not complete. But then again, when I heard that he finished it in about 20, 25 minutes, mine was several hours. I don't understand how they even got past the very first step of the finances in less than 25 hours. So I think it was
How about association with known criminals?
Right.
He's got 3 or 4, right?
What do you mean? He's got 20 of them. Myself included. Alan Weisselberg. You have Rudy Giuliani. You have Eastman, Clark. You have Christina Hobb. I mean, you have, there's a ton of them.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
To name just a few, right? So let me do this. And because I want to switch gears and stay kind of on this Trump trial. Because again, you were there. Did anything stand out to you? What was your favorite moment? And because I know it's old news already, but I value the fact that you were there. What was your favorite moment in the courtroom when I was on the stand?
When you were on the stand. So let's, so to me, the signal feature as I look on it was the absence of any, even the thing they tried to make such a big deal about with the
1 minute and 39, the 1 minute 39 second.
By the way, a very great moment. You didn't get to see the closing. You heard about this though, right?
I did.
That Steinglass timed it and did a simulated. So to me, the great part was the absence of any kind of big thing that he could try to exploit. But there were several. Here was one that you didn't even know. Pecker had testified to something about something you had said, and they asked you about what Pecker had said, and you said, "I don't recall." And to me, that was something I tweeted out and shown through because it made clear you weren't going to school on Pecker's testimony. You were out of the courtroom, and so it made clear there was no coordination. So that was a moment of genuineness. And then just in general, I've said this before, I've put on a lot of witnesses, and you're pretty happy if they just respond and don't get too far. You had the additional testimonial quality, and you can't, it's funny because one has to prepare to look natural, but of listening, taking it in, and responding. So it was actually, being in the moment, even though you'd prepared 25 times. So it's that overall impression. And of course, that's what the jury takes, not this, they tried to say as to that one thing, which you handled perfectly. You were flummoxed, not, perjure. You weren't there either.
But I didn't, but here's the thing though. I never
played. I just let me finish because it's your question. So it was less the signal and more the overall point that you know, and you and I talked a little bit about this like a year ago. Just don't let them get your goat. And, you know, you didn't, and it wasn't easy. And you were under a very, very, very high focus microscope. So, you know, that's you handled yourself without being defensive. Not easy, and especially because you feel screwed in many ways. So,
right. So with that minute 39, I never wavered. Right when Blanche was trying to keep hammering minute 39. Yeah. Well, you're lying, aren't you? No, sir. Yeah. And then he said to me, "So you believe that you spoke to Mr. Trump at the?" I know I did. Yeah. I know I did, sir. And that was like that was the one where then all these fucking assholes, especially members of Congress, went running outside that he just perjured himself because he claimed that he absolutely recalls, you know, doing it, and he clearly couldn't because it's only a minute and 39. Then we had the luxury, thanks to Barron's graduation and Trump deciding that he wanted to go, you know, he wanted to meet his child for the first time. All of a sudden, right, we had the time to find the tape on it, and shows that 5 minutes, right, earlier is when they got off the stage. And sure, you
guys found, the DA found the tape, not CNN?
No, it was the
CNN
DA.
got a hold of it.
I think, I think the DA is the one that actually found it. And you know, I give them a lot of credit. But the slope, Todd Blanche, right, the stupidest lawyer of all time, he made, I think, 5 mistakes in the questioning of me. One, when he started talking about Gene Friedman, known as the Taxi King, was my partner. No, sir. What do you mean he wasn't your partner? And he gets angry, when, you know, because he must have had 10 pages there. Because Gene Friedman was a bad dude, right? What do you mean he wasn't your? Well, sir, he was never my partner. Would you like me to explain? And that's where I knew he screwed up. He goes, I absolutely would. And so I lean over and I start to talk to the jury. It was the second
defense trial, right?
Yeah. Now I turn around and I start talking to the jury. He was never my partner. He leased my medallions. No different than if you lease an apartment from a building that has 1,000 apartments in it. That doesn't make, just because you're leasing an apartment doesn't mean that you're an owner or that you're partners with the owner of the property. He was leasing for a sum certain pursuant to a contract. No different than a lease agreement.
So, and he was Michael, like, how did you decide when to look at the jury? How did you decide? You know, because sometimes you did, other times you looked at the
It just had to feel right. It just had to feel right.
So you actually you were in the moment enough to have a sort of human interaction feel.
Because
did you get any? Because they were, to me, a notably poker-faced jury. They had a sense of that. Did you get? Yeah, tell me. You don't have to name number 7 and number 3.
There were times,
did you get any feedback or feel from them?
So there were times in the conversation that I can see through my periphery that they were sitting up in their seats more so than, and you know, you could see that they were interested in that specific question. And once Todd Blanche opened up the door for me to explain it, like what happened with the taxes, right? I can see them all sitting there. And then afterwards, I can see them shaking and nodding their head. Yeah.
You thought it, huh?
And I can.
That's the kind of thing that lawyers are exquisitely sensitive to in a courtroom. And I was trying to see from where I was, and you know, nobody appreciates it at all. Okay, so you felt they were with you.
Oh yes, basically. Yes. I knew exactly which ones were more in tune with me than the others. But you know, then what I did is
we could talk about. I don't think it'd be illegal to talk about that now, would it?
No,
I don't know. I don't want to get merchant mad at you.
You know, but my point is, I wanted them to hear the truth, and I wanted them to hear it in my voice and the way that I explained it, not the way that Todd Blanche wanted to characterize it or that the media had previously characterized it. Yeah. You know, he made mistakes. He opened up the door, allowing me to connect with the jury on topics that I knew that they wanted to hear about. And so I did. Yeah. And clearly, you know, as the narrator of the story, don't forget, they heard from 19 other witnesses before me. So they heard the story. Now they're going to hear it with my ability as a narrator to tell the and final
story. And how did you feel about this, Michael? Because this isn't news to you, right? The prosecution basically trashed you through various witnesses to lower expectations and to pull the sting out. So they were, they told the jury about different, bad deeds, etc. Do you think, did you feel miffed about that, or that they overplayed it? I'm not telling you anything you don't know, right?
No, you're not. And I didn't feel miffed about it. Look, the reason why is what I did, and I took ownership of. In fact, that acceptance of responsibility, in part sent me to prison, right? Like the campaign finance violations, those two, and the lying to Congress. Interestingly enough, as I stated, there was a joint defense agreement on that statement that I ended up pleading. Elevate every morning with Tommy John's second skin underwear, because what you put in your pants can make or break your day, and the luxurious support of second skin guarantees that everything will go smoothly, and we need smooth. So when you wear Tommy John, you're much more comfortable, and when you're more comfortable, you can do everything better. Tommy John's stylish and soft second skin underwear has dozens of comfort innovations, like a supportive contour pouch and breathable, lightweight, moisture-wicking fabric with 4 times the stretch of competing brands. With over 20 million pairs sold and thousands of 5-star reviews, guys everywhere love their Tommy Johns. I mean, that's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics, like this one who raves, the most comfortable box of briefs ever. There's no downside. Buy one pair and you'll never want to wear any other underwear again. I mean, I've been trying different brands of trunks for the past few months while wearing a similar product for the past 3 years. Second Skin is by far the most comfortable I've ever worn, hands down. I mean, that's my opinion, hands down. They are the most comfortable. And I know, because they're soft and they hold you right where you need to be. So look, I'm certainly one who wears them. I am one who recommends them. Tommy John is the way that you want to go. Plus, here's another part. Plus, your most valuable assets are always covered with Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or its free guarantee. So get 20% off your first order right now at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. Save 20% on second skin at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. That's TommyJohn.com/Cohen. See the site for details. Guilty to. Abby Lowell was involved in that document creation too. So was Ty Cobb, right, who's consistently on CNN, the jerk off that he is. Jared, Ivanka, Alan Garton, Jay Sekulow. I mean, there were a ton of people involved in the crafting of that document. And so, but I'm the only one, once again, that got stuck holding the bag. But putting that aside.
I have to have one more. You're the only one, period, who had turned on him and told the full truth. And the DA, had to play with the cards they were dealt. They couldn't even go by Weisselberg. But to me, like the Ronna Graff hardly said anything. And then in particular, Westerhout to me was like, completely shading her testimony to pander to him. Oh, you weren't there for it, so maybe you're not aware, but there are others.
I don't know exactly what she said.
Oh, that'll be an interesting thing for you to read the transcript. But you were the only guy. I mean, and of course that in terms of the overall point we're talking about, you had a story where you could say, this shit happened. I'm going to protect my family. And from this point on, I am telling the truth and you can't show otherwise. Whereas there were many, Pecker, you probably have heard, was almost a charming kind of rogue. He was just an open book. I did that. Yeah. But then others, the one you could tell which were trying to be, including Hope Hicks, who broke down in tears, as you know, poor thing, who were trying still not to harm him. Because that's who the witnesses that they had to put on were.
Yeah, that's called the cult. So that's called being in the cult. So let me ask you this then, because in a conversation with former Senator Al Franken, you were discussing Trump's sentence, and you said, and I quote, "If he doesn't win, he has an appreciable chance of dying in prison. Perhaps. But how much time do you think that Mershon will ultimately give him?
Okay. And let me just say, that's gotten a huge play. To me, it's just math and the fact that those other cases aren't going away. I think Mershon will give him not very much time. And, often you'd get 0, but there's a lot of shit he's done that I think would factor in. And Mershon will stay the sentence. If I have to guess and, put down bets, it would be something like 3 months and 5 years probation, stay the sentence so you can appeal. But all that time he's on probation. And then if he doesn't win, there's the whatever's left of the 1-6 trial will go forward. The Mar-a-Lago case will eventually go forward. Fulton County, maybe the pieces will get put back again, but he's on probation for 5 years, this is a really, really big point. I can imagine in a society ruled by a philosopher king, what would you do with a guy like Trump? You would do like you did with Nixon. You would say, just get the fuck away, never bother us again, and you're going to be your own. But because we've been so adamant about, rule of law like every other person, now he's charged with cases that are not going to go away. There's nobody to play the role of philosopher king. That Mar-a-Lago case, it, Michael, it's open and shut. It's not going away.
Harry, do you remember? Harry, do you remember?
By the way, years.
Yeah.
And he's 77. Sorry,
Harry, do you remember when I turned around on television so many times and I used to attack people on television saying, you keep saying that this is a weak case. It's not a real case. It's a stupid case. It's a ticky-tock case. And I turned around and I said, it is an open.
I never said it.
No, I'm not talking about you. That it's it's a documentary case. It's based on documentation and testimony. Yeah. I said, it is not. I said, first of all, why are we treating these 4 cases, the 4 indictments against Trump, like it's the Kentucky Derby, that we have to rank them? Which one is the best? Which one is the least? Right. They're all illegal. And I say that Mershon, because I believe him to be very Solomonian. I believe
that's a great word for him. He really is.
He really is. And I had so much respect for him, not even speaking to him, just being there with him, that he was so precise and he was so that he projects strength of court. And that's why I stayed off.
You know what he did with McDonald, right? That was a beautiful moment in the whole trial. That was maybe the best. Wow.
I don't.
You don't know this.
No.
Okay. McDonald comes out and he's his only witness, and he starts muttering shit under his breath. No. You're not
talking about McDonald. You're talking about Costello.
I'm sorry, Costello. Yeah, totally. Sorry,
that I know.
Forget that brain. Okay, yeah. Anyway, you know that. But back to Mershon. Yeah, go ahead.
So my point is, I believe that he's going to give him. Think about it this way, because again, I think incredibly highly of Mershon.
Me too.
And the way that he conducts himself.
And he's considered tough on white-collar offenders, too. Yeah.
So I could see him giving Trump, which is something that nobody offers anybody else. I certainly wasn't offered it. An option A and an option B. Option A is prison, right? Is jail. And I think it would be a 1-year sentence, or maybe a year and a day, so that he can get the benefits of a year and a day, right?
So he doesn't have to be in Rikers, you mean? Or?
Correct. So a year and a day. And with that, obviously, I'm with you, a 5-year supervised release post and so on, or option B.
And he's committed a crime already, by the way.
Correct.
On probation. He's got possession of a gun as a felon. Go ahead.
Okay. Or option B. And what's option B? Well, you do 1,000 hours, you stay out of jail, you do 1,000 hours of community service in either serving food to the homeless or picking up trash on the highway or in a park. Something that benefits
preferably
society.
Some sympathy, and you encounter other people.
Correct.
Yep.
Something like that. Plus, you're still going to get your supervised release post that. So the choice is yours. Now, while you're running and obviously you can't be in the homeless shelter or the park picking up garbage while you're running for the president, for the presidency. But on those days that you do not have speeches or rallies and so on, you're not playing golf, you're not kicking back at Mar-a-Lardo at the pool, wolfing down burgers. You're going to work in a soup kitchen or picking up garbage. Those would be the two options, really, to put some humility in a man that was so fucking disrespectful to not just to the judge, not just to the court system, not just to the witnesses, not just to the jury, but to America. You know what I mean? That's something I could see Mershon doing.
I mean, that would be a very, very, very unusual, just the structure, pick A versus B. You could see B. I just wrote a piece about this in the Atlantic about, what could happen. And in a weird way, if he gives him probation straight up, it could be worse for Trump, because I've talked to practitioners all over New York. Basically, nobody ever stays a sentence of probation. Maybe he would. He doesn't want to cause a whole crazy political situation. But typically, if you get probation and there are conditions of it, including what you're talking about, it's not stayed. So it just goes up on appeal and you have to do it. So that if he could actually do something where he does require it, though he doesn't want to mess with the campaign. I don't see A or B, just because, for one, even if it weren't anomalous, why would they do it? But why give him the choice? But nevertheless, I could see either of those, and the headline will be, he's given him a few months. But it's really all the other stuff, including, subject to probation for 5 years, that I think are Trump hasn't quite realized how constrained he is, and he's now, he's a convict.
Yep.
And life for convicts can be really onerous.
Yeah, you tell me about it. I do.
Yeah.
The one thing that's been sort of running around my mind is you look to see what they just did to Hunter Biden, right? And again, he broke the law and so on, though I think I'm in agreement with what you said. I can't believe that this is really where they're at on this document case, especially, of course, Republicans don't even believe that you should have to fill out a form anyway in order to get a firearm. So it's kind of like ridiculous. But here's where
he's got a constitutional argument to make on appeal, but it's only about the one count. I don't think it would change.
Agreed. But here's my question for you. We now know that Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, is now being investigated for whether it's FARA violations or the inappropriate or the conduct, right? For the $2 billion plus that he's received from the Middle East, specifically Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Now, he was corrupt before he got into the White House and never passed a background check. My question is,
revised his SF-86 26 times or something. Yeah.
So my question is, why take so long? You see, had they brought this investigation 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or when it was 6 months max that he was out of the White House before he got that $2 billion. Why did they not investigate him then? Because now Republicans will say, all right, you're playing tit for tat. Wait till we have the House right now. Yeah. So we're going to start going after Harry Littman. We're going to start going after, the rest of the Biden family, Dr. Jill Biden. They're going to go after Kamala Harris. They'll go after everybody.
Yeah.
Why?
Two-part answer. We're not 100% sure they haven't, but the main answer is, I don't know. There's like Jamie Gorelick was his lawyer way back when. And so that's a serious thing. It was more the SF-86 thing. But, it's not, I don't think he's gotten a full, but I just don't know. And I'll say this from having defended and gotten bloodied on TV and stuff about Merrick Garland. It's very hard to know from outside, what delays things. Sometimes it's bureaucratic lassitude. Sometimes it's, politicized in a small p way, commands from on high. But sometimes, especially where it involves foreign countries, there's all kinds of process and negotiations and hoops you have to jump through. I'm not saying it's happened here, but the answer is I just don't know. But I don't think anyone is just like, put it at the bottom of their inbox and forgotten about it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then, because according to Justice Alito's own intimations, there are some decisions coming from the Supreme Court that people are really not going to like. Would you do me a favor, right? Can you speculate on what we can expect from the court, especially on the issues of immunity, women's reproductive rights, and so on?
Yeah. Here we are midway through June. They only go to the end of June. Nearly half of their opinions have not issued. If you can believe that, it's partly because they do so few these days. I think this court is really seriously out of step with American society. I clerk there. I love the court, and I know there are many times court's finest moments where they are counter-majoritarian. But when you get so out of whack and they have their own sort of obeisance to a whole philosophy, it's bad news, and they've been bad news, and they're going to be bad news. Couple points. There are a few things here that they've taken, haven't issued yet, that are reviews, I think, of the Fifth Circuit, where the Fifth Circuit was just so totally not on the moon, but on Venus. And they're actually going to reverse them, and there'll be some headlines that'll be like, oh, look at this moderate Supreme Court. Don't believe it for a friggin' second. That's just, these couple things where they were really extreme. But the big things, so there's, for starters, immunity, where the D.C. Circuit issued a very solid bipartisan opinion with, people on both sides of the aisle, and they're going to take that and they're going to muck it up and give some time when a president gets immunity, and it, besides itself being an abridgment of the principle that nobody's above the law, it's going to almost certainly create an additional delay that will mean that this most important, not the strongest is Mar-a-Lago, but the most important case, the 1-6 case, will not go to trial between now and November, and that sucks. I think likewise, the obstruction case involving the Fisher, who was one of the marauders on January 6th, will probably go for Fisher in a way that could have real implications for Trump on his obstruction charges in Mar-a-Lago. Yes, I think they will permit. There'll be problems in voting rights, problems in abortion, where they'll let states go forward, and then guns. I actually think the biggest gun case will be decided. This will be one of the things where they say, oh, the Supreme Court isn't totally off the reservation. That the way this case goes down, it'll be in favor of the state regulation. But basically, we got a steamroll. We got 5 or 6 that do what they want. And even where Roberts wants to temper it, he can't. And this is going to be an ugly, ugly fortnight.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this then, because, obviously, and I've been saying this pretty much my entire life, I don't understand why Supreme Court justices, I don't understand why federal court judges have tenure for life. I don't understand it. I don't agree with it.
You understand it.
I understand it. I don't agree. Well, it's not. It's really not. It
really is. Wait. I don't want to be a dick, but it really is in the Constitution.
Yes, but to me, I just don't. I don't understand it. For meaning, you got Clarence Thomas, who took $4 million in gifts from several different parties, mostly this guy Harlan Crow. And yet, there's absolutely no consequence And there can be no consequence to Clarence Thomas unless Clarence Thomas wants to give himself a consequence, which is the point I was trying to make, that I don't understand how our founding fathers didn't understand this.
43 years old when it gets, he said, they made me miserable for 43 years. I'm going to make them miserable for 43 years. And we've done about 33 of it. That's right. There's impeachment. Now, there are reasons, but I think you're saying on balance, you disagree with the reasons. You also have judges who get really old and doddering. On the other hand, life tenures, insulation from politics. But then what happens if the politics are within the court? But it would take a constitutional amendment.
Right. Yeah. But let's be clear about something. In the olden days, right, they didn't think that there would be a Supreme Court judge that wouldn't accept the job for the honor of what it was. Now, when you have someone like Harlan Crow, who's worth billions of dollars and showering $400,000-$500,000 a week, trips on private planes and yachts and on cool islands and so on. Yeah, so Clarence turns around and says, fuck it, right? Might as well fuck it. Well, look, let me move on because I have two more questions.
But just quickly, he said he let the word out that he was maybe going to quit, and that's when conservatives really got going and gave him money. And I just want to say, I think Alito's thing is much worse. But anyway, move on.
By the way, so do I. We all live in our own bubbles, right? But you're a reporter, you're a professor, you're a columnist. What's your opinion on how voters are digesting all of this information about the decline of democracy in the United States? Because assuming that they're actually even paying attention, I hate it when somebody says, "Oh, so how you doing?" Wow, you really got. They know nothing. They say, "I don't watch the news. I don't read the newspaper. I don't want to know about it." Really, right? I mean, they're not paying attention. So my question to you is, do voters really even care to understand why democracy is important?
And what a question it is. I think of myself, Michael, I really do, as like an educator in my little area where I can talk about law and how things work. But, I come up against this all the time. It's the most important issue there is. I extolled the verdict in New York when others said, it can be overruled by the voters. And of course it could, but it meant a lot that the rule of law had triumphed in its own way. Everything I'll just say this, everything I observe and learn from people I really respect and who know this sort of politics better than I is bad news. Just about it's just stunning to me how again and again and again and again, and we're talking from Access Hollywood through January 6th, and now he's got a blueprint right out there saying, I'm going to make this country Turkey or worse. How it's even a possible toss-up out of an election just turns my stomach. And I've heard some encouraging things that if you really analyze it to the few swing voters, that the democracy could matter to them. But the fact that at a minimum, half the country is indifferent about it, I feel like, are we like crazy elitists or something? This is the American experiment. This is everything. It's so plainly on the line. And the answer to your question is, I'm no expert, but as best I can tell, people do not care a lot. And it's deeply discouraging about, at the end of the day, we're not going to have other trials. Who knows what will happen? It really will come down to the American people. And if they give us all President Trump, at the end of the day,
we're all in trouble
in some perverse way. But it's the fact that this is in play now is mind-boggling to me every day. It really is.
So then let me ask you this as a final question, because the hour goes by quickly here on Mea Culpa.
It does, yeah.
If you had to isolate one message that the Biden campaign should be repeating over and over and over again, what would it be?
So it would be exactly this, put everything else aside. This, truth, justice, liberty, and the American way truly, truly are on the ballot. But they think about this, and they also are banging their head against the wall because it only does so much. And some of them are being urged by pundits to economy. And I mean, even that, right? They have such good news on it, but people just believe somehow that, oh, Trump is better for the economy and jobs will be better with him, et cetera. So, basically that to me is the message, but they know, better. And they're, I think, frustrated with just this question. It does seem to me as an outsider that they are vacillating a bit and aren't exactly sure. They've gone back and forth, and even, with after the trial, et cetera. I mean, there's a fucking convict who's running for president. When Spiro Agnew was convicted of a felony, it was clear he had to leave the vice presidency's office. But here we go with Trump. So I think, as you and I are doing, and at least half the country is doing, they are also metaphorically banging their head against the wall, saying, what will work here? But they're doing it in very pragmatic ways. They're smart, and they have to play it smart. And so that seems to mean messages other than this. But to me, everything pales next to these broad stakes that are really, 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 truly on the ballot.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Harry. Appreciate
Thank
you,
Michael.
Appreciate.
Way to go, you giant killer.
Listen, look, I told everybody that this is going to be the one and only case that goes on before the election.
You did.
And they all laughed at me and they're like, oh, well, he's going to go middle. I can't tell you the number of people on television who've gotten it wrong. Fortunately, when the reason why I asked you to join me today, because you actually got it right. So I thank you. I thank you for joining me as always. I thank you for making us smarter and for helping us to spread the truth about democracy, women's rights, and so on.
Thank you so much, Michael. And just a very quick thing on that. I'm, as a prosecutor, I was never triumphant about convictions. The really important thing is that things worked though there was a lot of pressure on them, and you were part of that. I think it was a just result, but the main thing is that the rule of law worked. In one little, you saw that courtroom, sort of dilapidated old courtroom in Manhattan. Things went as they were supposed to. That was a good day. Well, there are other challenges, but that was a good day.
That's for sure.
See you soon, I hope.
You got it, pal.
Bye-bye.
Bye.